What happens when a Hollywood cinematic icon clashes with a rising political star live on national television? What began as a seemingly light-hearted conversation where entertainment meets governance swiftly morphed into one of the most jaw-dropping broadcast moments of the year. Brad Pitt, the globally renowned actor known for his composed demeanor and enduring charm, abruptly walked off the set of Patriot Spotlight following a charged exchange with Karoline Leavitt, the White House press secretary noted for her sharp intellect and uncompromising stance. The discussion spiraled quickly, veering far beyond a standard interview and transforming into a volatile intersection of two cultural forces, cinema and politics, leaving a lasting mark on viewers across the nation. Before diving into the details, comment below with where you're tuning in from, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a developing story. Under the studio lights of Patriot Spotlight, veteran host James Thornton stepped onto the stage, his calm demeanor and warm smile masking the sharp instincts of someone familiar with intense public exchanges. His rich voice echoed with anticipation as he welcomed the audience. "Welcome to Patriot Spotlight," he began, with the poise of a seasoned conductor about to lead a live performance. When Brad Pitt's name was announced, the audience roared to life. Applause thundered through the studio as cheers and whistles rang out, a reception befitting a screen legend. Pitt appeared in a sleek, dark gray suit, his presence composed and deliberate, exuding both charisma and grace. He waved warmly to the crowd and walked over to shake hands with Karoline Leavitt, seated confidently across from him in a tailored navy blue dress. She returned the gesture with a poised nod, her eyes sharp, appraising. Though this was their first encounter, the tension was almost palpable, setting the stage for a symbolic encounter between two commanding voices from vastly different worlds. Thornton eased into the interview with a familiar tone. "Borders of Hope is generating a lot of buzz. What inspired you to bring this story to the screen?" Pitt responded with warmth and purpose. "It's a film about the pursuit of a better life," he said, his voice thoughtful. "It reminds us that regardless of where we come from, we all share the same dreams." He glanced at the audience. Many nodded along in quiet agreement, while others, particularly a contingent wearing MAGA hats, sat silently, arms folded, waiting. Thornton pivoted. "Karoline, as White House press secretary, how do you feel about Hollywood addressing topics like immigration through film?" Leavitt leaned in slightly, her tone measured but unmistakably firm. "I have great respect for the storytelling Brad brings to this project," she began. "But films sometimes offer a version of reality that's more idealistic than practical. Immigration isn't just an emotional issue. It's tied to national security, economic impact, and rule of law. Our administration has a responsibility to protect American citizens and uphold our systems." A ripple passed through the audience. Some clapped, others remained reserved. Pitt's expression tightened, but he remained courteous. "I understand your concerns, Karoline," he replied, "but I think there's room for stories that simply aim to build empathy. Not everything needs to be a policy statement. Sometimes it's about humanizing an issue." Thornton, sensing rising tension, tried to bridge the 2 points. "Brad, you emphasize empathy. Karoline, you stress realism. Is there a way for these ideas to coexist?" Leavitt responded smoothly. "Art and politics can align, but only when both acknowledge truth. Hollywood holds incredible influence, and with that comes a responsibility not just to inspire, but to inform." Her gaze met Pitt's, not aggressive, but unwavering. He nodded, though his calm began to show faint cracks. "Responsibility matters," he said, "but art isn't bound to politics. Its purpose is to connect us. If we force every film to carry a political weight, we risk losing that human connection." The studio atmosphere thickened, as if the Air itself recognized the stakes had changed. Thornton leaned forward, his tone more probing now. Brad, your film highlights the immigrant experience. Do you believe it could influence how people view border policy? Leavitt took the floor, her voice precise. Art stirs emotions, no doubt about that, she said. But policies are based on facts and consequences. Last year alone, over 2 million undocumented crossings pushed local resources to the brink. That's a reality we can't overlook, even in compelling narratives. Applause followed, sharp and decisive from the right side of the room. Pitt exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. Borders of Hope isn't about politics, he countered. It's about people. If someone walks away from it with more empathy for families caught in the middle of this, that's meaningful. Cheers from his fans erupted, but they clashed with silence from the other half of the studio. Thornton pressed on. Karoline, how does Hollywood's freedom of expression affect real-world political discourse? Leavitt gave a slight nod, as if welcoming the challenge. Free expression is fundamental, she said. But with that freedom comes the responsibility to ensure that what's expressed isn't misleading. Films have power, and when they oversimplify deeply complex issues like immigration, they risk doing more harm than good. Another burst of clapping from the conservative-leaning crowd followed. Pitt's jaw tightened slightly. I don't disagree about responsibility, he replied. But we can't expect storytellers to include every nuance of policy. Art is about starting a conversation, not concluding one. Leavitt didn't miss a beat. Conversation's important. But when it leads people to believe our policies are rooted in cruelty rather than practicality, that conversation becomes one-sided. More cheers from her supporters. Pitt leaned forward, his voice more forceful. Now. With respect, Karoline, if all we ever do is argue policy, we'll forget the faces behind the numbers. Borders of Hope isn't propaganda, it's a call for compassion. Some clapped, others remained stony. Thornton, recognizing the divide widening, offered one final question to both. Is Hollywood helping or hurting our ability to have balanced national conversations? Leavitt's eyes lit with clarity. Polarization happens when people hear only one side, she said. Hollywood often presents powerful, emotional stories, but fails to include the broader implications. That shapes opinions, sometimes in misleading ways. We need balance. The audience responded with loud, assertive applause. Pitt took a long pause, his hands tightening slightly on the armrests. I respect your point, he said quietly. But the moment we ask artists to be policy experts, we risk stripping the soul from storytelling. We're not lawmakers. We're observers of the human condition. There was polite clapping, smaller now, less certain. The energy had shifted. The crowd was split. Pitt rose suddenly. I think we've said enough, he said, his tone civil, but resolute. Without waiting for a cue, he nodded at Thornton and exited the stage, the cameras trailing his steps as the studio sat in stunned silence. And just like that, the intersection of art and politics had reached its breaking point. Live, raw, and unforgettable. Some soft objections whispered through the studio as Pitt tightened his grip, his gaze flickering to Thornton as if searching for an escape. I don't think Hollywood's trying to cause division, he said, his voice slightly higher now, tinged with frustration. We make films to spark dialogue, to get people thinking. If Borders of Hope makes someone reconsider their view on immigration, that's a good thing, whether they agree with me or not. His words, though sincere, lacked the clarity and edge that characterized Leavitt's responses, and the audience sensed it. Some of his fans clapped, but the applause quickly faded, drowned by the silence from the opposing side. Leavitt replied calmly, her voice steady but each word landing like a pinpoint. Dialogue is important, Brad, she said, locking eyes with him, not confrontationally but inviting him to go deeper. But real dialogue needs honesty. If Hollywood only highlights the struggles of immigrants and ignores the challenges faced by the communities that receive them, it's not dialogue. It's selective storytelling. She paused. Our administration wants discussions rooted in both heart and facts. Her words struck a chord, prompting the conservative audience to rise in applause while Pitt's supporters fell quiet, some exchanging worried glances. Pitt frowned, his eyes flickering as if struggling to find footing. "I don't agree that. It's propaganda," he said, his voice now carrying an edge, his patience wearing thin. "We're not trying to push an agenda. We're telling a story. If that story makes someone feel something, that's enough." But his defense, while passionate, didn't carry the precision of Leavitt's remarks, and the crowd seemed to pick up on it. Alex Thornton, calm but clearly engaged, leaned forward slightly. "Brad, Karoline, we've spoken about art and responsibility," he said, his voice smooth and deliberate. "But is Hollywood, with its cultural weight, actually harming political discussions by only presenting one side?" The question hit hard, unexpected and sharp. Pitt straightened up, his hands on his thighs, but they trembled faintly. He cleared his throat and looked out toward the audience. "I don't think Hollywood is causing harm," he said with a hint of defiance. "We make films to provoke thought, not to shape policy. Borders of Hope isn't legislation. It's a story. I'm here to touch hearts, not debate law." But again, his words seemed more like a defense than an argument, and applause from his supporters was faint, overpowered by conservative silence. Leavitt sat upright, poised and still, her expression calm, but eyes ablaze with conviction. "Brad, I understand the emotional power of stories," she said, her tone even. "But when Hollywood presents only one narrative, the immigrant struggle, and omits the strain placed on border communities, that's not fostering thought, it's steering it." The crowd again rose in applause, echoing through the studio. Pitt's side remained hushed, some shaking their heads in quiet frustration. Pitt leaned forward toward Thornton, a flicker of panic crossing his features. "Karoline, I'm not here to argue policy," he said, his voice rising, quick and tense, like someone trying to exit a trap. "I make movies, not political speeches. If you want to talk data or laws, that's not my field." His words, rather than cooling the tension, only inflamed it. Some conservatives smirked. His fans whispered among themselves, concern growing. Thornton, ever composed, stepped in to steady the conversation. "You've both made strong points," he said, trying to keep balance. "Karoline, Brad says films don't have to be political. Do you want to respond?" It was a final chance. But Pitt's composure had worn thin. He stood suddenly, arms spread wide, eyes blazing. "I didn't come here to be cornered like this," he said, voice trembling. "I wanted to discuss the film, not get dragged into a political fight. That's enough." And with that, he turned and walked swiftly off the stage. A hush fell over the studio, punctuated by murmurs and gasps. Some audience members booed, others watched in stunned silence. Leavitt remained seated, her expression composed, lips gently pursed. She gave no sign of victory, only the quiet assurance of someone who had delivered her message. She glanced at Thornton and gave a subtle nod of thanks. Thornton stood, raising a hand to regain control of the room. "Thank you, Brad and Karoline, for a passionate discussion," he said, his voice both reassuring and professional. "We've heard two powerful perspectives, and that's what Patriot Spotlight is all about. Please, a round of applause for both." Applause followed, but it was uneven, some for Leavitt, others silent, reflecting on Pitt's abrupt exit. As the studio lights dimmed, Leavitt stood and shook Thornton's hand, her expression calm, her eyes glowing with quiet satisfaction. The audience began to disperse, but the energy remained electric. Trump supporters cheered Leavitt, while Pitt's fans clustered together, frustrated and confused. Some discreetly pulled out phones, uploading videos of Pitt's exit with captions like, "Pitt walks off after losing to Leavitt." Others, more neutral, murmured about her sharpness, as though a new chapter in political communication had just been written. Backstage, Pitt moved quickly through the hallway, footsteps echoing. In the green room, he stood with hands on hips, breathing hard. His team rushed to his side. "Brad, you did your best," an assistant said, clearly rattled. "I didn't come here to argue politics," Pitt muttered almost to himself. "I just wanted to talk about the film. She was too sharp." His manager rested a hand on his shoulder. "We'll handle it. The public will see you stayed true to your message." Pitt nodded, but his expression remained distant, replaying the confrontation in his head. Back on the set, Leavitt exchanged final words with Thornton. Dressed in a sleek navy suit, she exuded composed charisma. "Thank you for the fair platform," she said, eyes clear. "You really got people thinking," Thornton replied with a nod. Nearby, an assistant checked their phone. "A Pitt walk-off is trending." Leavitt offered a faint smile but didn't comment, her posture speaking for itself. In the lobby, debates flared again. Trump supporters praised Leavitt. "She spoke the truth," one man exclaimed. "Hollywood thinks they know it all, but she cut through that." Across the room, Pitt fans defended him. "He just wanted to talk about his movie," one said. "She was too aggressive," another added. "She wasn't aggressive, just too smart," someone replied. "Brad wasn't ready." Online, reactions exploded. "Karoline Leavitt just schooled Brad Pitt in real debate," wrote one user. "Brad didn't sign up for a political ambush," countered another. Clips of Pitt's walk-off and Leavitt's poised response went viral. Even neutral voices chimed in. Both made good points, but Leavitt had the edge. Pitt wasn't prepared. Media outlets picked up the story. Fox News hailed Leavitt as a rising star, crediting her logic and poise. CNN defended Pitt, arguing he was cornered into a political exchange. A piece from Variety read, "This wasn't just Pitt versus Leavitt, it was Hollywood versus conservative America, emotion versus reason." The debate rippled across platforms, fueling broader discussions. Pitt's team released a statement. Brad Pitt appeared on Patriot Spotlight to promote Borders of Hope and its humanitarian message. He left to protect his artistic integrity. Supporters praised him, critics mocked him. One Trump supporter posted, "Protecting art or running from a real debate?" Leavitt, meanwhile, leaned into the moment. She appeared on Newsmax, her tone respectful. "I respect Brad's work, but we must have honest conversations, especially about immigration." Clips from the interview circulated widely, cementing her as a fresh face of Republican messaging. Privately, Leavitt took a call from President Trump. "Karoline, you were terrific," he said, booming. "You showed Hollywood we won't back down." "Thank you, Mr. President," she replied with measured confidence. Thornton faced both praise and critique. "You let Pitt get ambushed," one viewer posted. "We gave both the same platform," Thornton told his team. "They determined the outcome." The moment stayed in the public's mind, like a story still unraveling. Pitt reappeared days later at a charity event, speaking with grace and humility. "I wasn't ready for a political showdown," he admitted. "But I learned, if you're on that kind of stage, be ready for anything." His fans rallied. "Brad's still a legend," read one post. Leavitt, dressed in striking red at a conservative summit, spoke passionately about immigration policy. Patriot Spotlight had transformed her into a symbol of the new Republican voice. Thornton, reflecting on the broadcast, declared, "This show isn't about drama. It's about truth. And truth emerges when ideas collide." The event had sparked debate, split viewers, and generated intense emotion. But it also highlighted the importance of preparation, calm, and the need for true dialogue in a deeply divided nation. And in that sense, both Pitt and Leavitt left their mark.